Greetings, everybody. My name is John L. Thompson. I'm an independent author and graphic designer. Today on Shop Talk, we're going to talk with Tony Roberts, current author of the Casca, the Eternal Mercenary series, originally written by Barry Sadler. And stay tuned. Grab a cup of coffee, cigarettes, whatever your flavor is, and hit the like and subscribe button because there will be more. Appreciate it.
Hello, John. Hello, John. How are you?
All right, Tony. How are you doing?
Well, not too bad. It's nice and bright here in not so sunny England now, but
Yeah.
yes, there we are. How is it over there in New Mexico?
It is a little overcast, windy, and calling for more rain, but that's all right. We need it.
We've got plenty for you.
All right, you can send some over here. We could use it.
All right. Oh.
Yeah. Yep. There we go. So yeah, heard about Queen Elizabeth II. She passed away. You know.
Yeah.
Everybody there.
Yeah, I mean, she was 96, so it wasn't much of a sort of shock, really. I know a lot of people are still surprised, but
yeah,
it's like the old saying, isn't it? Long live the Queen, or the Queen is dead, long live the King. So
right, and then she lived at 96 years old. It's pretty healthy. That's a long time. I mean,
yeah. And she was still working up to about 2 days before she died. So, you know.
Right. She, you know, and she, I guess you could say she was kind of like the mother of the world kind of thing. You know, everybody that's alive today knows Queen Elizabeth II. You know,
yes.
So
yeah.
She was always there. She was always there when I was a kid. You know.
Yeah, she was a good monarch. She was a good monarch. You know, you got good monarchs, bad monarchs, like you got good governments and bad governments. And, you know, she was a good one. And it's a shame that she's gone. But so we'll have to change all our banknotes and all our coins and everything. And our stamps.
Everything. She was everywhere.
Yes, she was.
So on to Casca.
Casca, yes, the Eternal Mercenary.
Right. How long have you been involved in the writing of the series?
In writing, I got the job in the autumn of 2005. I had been the official website organizer for 5 years before that, in the latter days of Gary Sizemore. Gary Sizemore was Barry Sadler's manager and friend, and he had been running the Casca series, the franchise, or whatever you want to call it, the business, for quite a few years. During Barry Sadler's time, the original author, and after he died, the 10-year legal battle to sort out Barry's will, and then the hiring of Paul Dengaleghi, who was my predecessor as author of the series. And then I got in contact with Gary just the last couple of years of his life, before he died of, I think, leukemia, I think it was he had. And funny enough, the person who informed me of his death was Thor Sadler, Barry's eldest son. So there you go. Because we were briefly in contact at the time. Right.
Well, and Paul Dengaleghi wrote 2 books in the series.
2, yeah, 1999 and 2001. It was just 2
right.
books.
Liberator and Defiant.
Yes. Now, here's a bit of trivia for you. I mean, I was corresponding with Paul at the time, and he told me that the original title of The Defiant was going to be Return to the Empire. There you go.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the publishers, Berkeley, didn't want Return to the Empire. Said, no, it's got to be something else, The Defiant. So that's what they came up with.
And that's what they went with, Defiant.
That's what they came with.
Yeah, and what was interesting about Dengaleghi, and I talked to him probably, I want to say about 2012. I talked to him a couple times on the phone.
So that was long after I finished talking to him.
Yeah, and his perspective on the Casca series is he wanted to write stories that talked about Casca's Adventures Between Wars. And I found that a little interesting. Huh?
Not a good idea.
Not
a good idea.
Well, he was, to be fair.
For everybody who knows, or even everybody who doesn't know, Casca, the Eternal Mercenary is an action-adventure historical series.
Exactly.
And it is centered on war. You know, whether you like war or not, it's centered on that. It's a military action-adventure series with an immortal mercenary put in amongst all these conflicts. It's a great vehicle for writing about the various wars and conflicts. So to go with the intention of writing in between conflicts is not a very good idea, because it's the antithesis of what Casca is all about. And I think that's part of the reason why Paul's books were not well received.
Right. Yeah, it could be debatable. He has his own legion of followers, you know, to be fair.
Everybody does.
Everybody
I've got people who like my writing. I've got people who don't like my writing.
Exactly.
That's the way it goes.
And you can't satisfy everybody. That's the one thing we've learned in this Odyssey with the Casca series.
Absolutely.
You know,
my take on it is, this is what I'm going to write. You can get it and love it if you like. If you don't like it, then don't buy it.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, we know quite a bit about, you know, from 2005 up to the current, not so much currently, but in the early years when you first took over as writer, there was controversy. And of course, there was strong criticism. You had it on the Casca Yahoo group page. You know, we all hung out there, and there was good and there was bad. Most of it was good. Your style of writing is pretty exceptional. So
thanks.
Yep. And you've developed your own legion or your own following, devoted. Yes. You know, so
I mean, I was stuck around long enough for, you know, people now to get used to me. And, you know, I don't just write Casca, I write other series as well. So, you know, they can see what I write like away from Casca if they like, with my other series.
How many books have you written?
Oh, blimey, a good question.
You got like 2 or 3 series going. You got your fantasy.
3.
3.
2 fantasies and the Casca. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Casca, and then of course you've done some standalones. I've done a
standalone. Yeah, a horror police one, the standalone, and I've also done 5 books in Siren, the rock band story that covers 35 years from 1979 to 2014. Right. So I did 5 books on that, and people like that one too, but they say it's, you know, very different from Casca, which, yes, I've deliberately tried to write more in the Barry Sadler style doing Casca, and it's a little bit different from what I would normally write. So, you know, it took a bit of getting used to. I think I took 3 or 4 books to get into my stride with the Casca series. Yeah. My first 3 books, I admit myself, weren't my best because I was finding my feet. There was an interesting review on Amazon by one reader who said that I seem to have a sort of like a Damascene moment 2/3 of the way through The Confederate, where suddenly it took off. And that was the point where suddenly I loosened up and cut loose from what I'd been trying to do before and just gone with it.
Right.
And yeah, yes, that was from that moment on, I was in my stride.
Right. And you wrote, after Barry Sadler passed away, and you kind of knew that, okay, there wasn't going to be any more Casca books written by Sadler.
Yeah.
And you proceeded to write your own story?
I did. I had 4 on the go during the 90s when I was trying to collect Barry Sadler's series. I mean, I had number 3 to start off with. This one here, this very book was given me by my mother in 1986, which started my love of the series. It took me 13 years to collect all 22 of Barry Sadler's. And then, you know, I started the website up, and I've written 4 stories in the meantime. And I was in the middle of a 5th one when I got the call to take up the job as Casca writer.
Right. And how did that come about?
When Gary Sizemore died in 2003, I was sort of like in a limbo. I was thinking, well, here I am. I'm running the Casca website. Nobody seems to be writing them anymore because Paul Dengaleghi had sort of, his contract had been terminated. Berkeley had pulled out of the publishing. Gary Sizemore had died. Well, I said to myself, well, who's running it? So I was emailing everybody. I was trying to find who it was. And Lavona Sadler, the widow of Barry, was the one who apparently was the only owner of the series at that time. But one of the people who I emailed was a man called Gail Ryan, who was the sort of one of the people working with Gary Sizemore during the era of Barry Sadler and afterwards. And Gail then got together with Lavona in 2005 to form a new company, Easterburger Entertainment Incorporated, to take on the series. And Gail wrote to me, he said, do you know anybody who would write Casca stories? I said, well, here's one of mine. It was just pure chance. And I sent it to him and he sent it back to me saying, yes, we can do something with this. I don't want to do this story. I wanted to do the American Civil War. And the story I sent him was Scourge of Asia, which came out just after Gail died, and which you were the person who did the artwork for. And that's how you got the job as the artwork designer, right. Didn't you?
Yeah, and that was a roll of the dice when I hit you up to see if you were looking for a cover artist. To me, it was just a roll of the dice. I just I got a hold of you, and then from there, you gave me that little test to redo the covers.
It was meant to be, though, wasn't it? It's some of these things just come about and they're meant to be because your designs are very gritty, just what the series needs. It's military action adventure, and you don't need Fabio on the cover. You need someone who's been there, done it, got the T-shirt, killed thousands of people. I'm a badass, and that's basically what you need for a cover.
Yeah, and the element I was trying to get, I tried to copy a little bit of the UK covers with Star Publishing.
Yes, but that's a Star book.
Exactly. Exactly. I try to mimic that a little bit because each cover is different. Even the Casca characters look different.
Well, with the Casca series, when it was with Berkeley, they went through a whole number of different artists. And if you look at the covers, they do differ. They started off with using Barry Sadler's face. Certainly, the first half dozen, and then it started to change a little bit. They went back to Barry Sadler's, but then they got a new artist in who did numbers 9, 10, 12, 13, 14. If you look at those pictures, they're the same, and 16. And then they got Fabio in for 17 and 18, which got a lot of criticism.
Fabio's nice. That cover's nice.
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah. I don't know whether they were trying to attract female admirers of the series. I don't know. But it was a little bit of an own goal, if they say in football, or soccer, as you call it. And then they had another artist do 20, 21, and 22. So, and then we sort of had, when I started, Gail Ryan wanted to do the designs for the book covers, which... Yeah,
they were a little bit lacking. We'll just say that. They I understand he was probably trying to save a little bit of money by doing it himself, but he should have
put it in one.
Yeah, exactly. Because people do judge a book by its cover, right?
Yes.
And that's the first thing they look at. They look at the cover. If it piques their interest, they're going to read the back cover blurb, and they're going to, and that's going to be the deciding factor if they're going to buy it.
Well, I try to make the covers as attractive as possible, and I gave you the remits of what we wanted. And after the disasters of the 3 that Gail did, I told Gail that they were not acceptable. He wouldn't have it until on the forum, the blog, everybody was slagging it off, and in the end, Gail had to agree that I was right. And I was working at the time in the civil service, and I had somebody who was working with me called Damien Lee, who's got his own website, and he's a very good artist because he's now doing art. And he did a picture recently, about 3 or 4 days ago, of Taylor Momsen, the lead singer of the Pretty Reckless, the rock band.
Yes.
Very,
Yeah.
very good. Very
Yeah.
good. Excellent. Yeah. People can look at the Damien Lee artist. I can't remember what his website is, but it's
Yeah.
just drawings are exceptional. And I asked him to do a cover for me. It was the Avenger, and it was the usual collage that I was sort of wanting, including a very comely wench who was topless and had her hands over her,
Right.
her maidenhood. And Gail said, "Are you sure you want this? Some people might object." I said, "Great. If they do, it's controversy. It'll sell." I said, "Keep it on there. People will look at it and pick it up." And, to this day, The Avenger is the only book in the whole Casca series that's had people steal it. They stole it from his car outside his house.
Oh, wow.
The whole box of it. Never turned up.
They didn't? No? Oh.
No.
Which one was that?
It was The Avenger, and that's the cover. So you can see the woman involved.
Right.
That's Damien Lee's design, and it was stolen. The whole box of these was stolen from the car outside his house.
Wow.
And no other books in the series have been stolen. Yeah.
And then, of
Partly
course,
due to Gail being more careful.
yeah, it kind of makes you wonder where those books are now.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's one of the great mysteries, I guess. But for the let's see here, I'm trying to get this up. For the most part, so you started in 2005. You actually had a website, Casca.
Yes.
The official
.net.
Casca website before.
Yeah, Casca.net.
Yep, Casca.net. And that thing's been around for a good 20 years now, right?
Yeah, February 2000. That's when it started.
Yeah. And I remember when I first found that website, I sent you a story to read. And that was a long, long time ago. It wasn't a good story, I'll be honest.
I wouldn't worry about it. I don't read other people's stories, because if I do a story and then it contains stuff that somebody else sent, oh, that's my story, I'm doing you. So,
Right.
I have had people send me stories, very kindly, but I've never read them. I've sent them back and say, no, I am not doing that. I am doing my own stories. I don't want them contaminated or influenced by what anybody else has written. And that's why I no longer read fiction. I just don't.
Right. And that's one thing I've noticed. And for as long as we've known each other for quite a while.
Mm.
You don't like to take in. I used to. I remember people would actually send you Casca stories.
Yeah.
And of course, you would kindly, give it back.
Thank you, but no, thank you.
You're right. Thank you, but no, thank you. I'm glad you're a fan, and please.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I think it's great that they show that enthusiasm, but I don't want to run the risk of having some other person's writing influencing mine. I'll do my own stuff, and other people can write what they like, but I don't want to see it, because I don't want to run the risk of somebody then turning around and saying, "Oh, I'm going to sue you."
Right. Exactly. I can understand that.
It has happened to other writers. I've heard it happen. So
yes. Yeah, inadvertently too.
Yes.
Just an honest. Sometimes it's an honest mistake. But
it is.
And other times it's intentional. But that's a topic for another episode.
Oh yes.
And then back to Barry Sadler.
Barry Sadler, yeah.
Yeah, when he first started writing the series, he got the idea from a legend of what was it? The Roman soldier throwing the lance in the side of Christ.
Yes, I think one of the Gospels. I'm not sure whether it's John or I think it's John. I think he's the only one of the four Gospels that mentions it. The Roman soldier, and some people call him a centurion. He wasn't a centurion; he was just a soldier who pierced Jesus' side while he was hanging on the cross. what Barry Sadler did very ingeniously was to have Casca try to end his suffering. It was a kind of a noble gesture. It was like, you're hanging from the cross. It's not very nice, but I'll just hasten you on your way. And didn't quite do the job right. And all the blood came out all over his hand. And then Jesus obviously took exception to being stabbed on the cross. Like, come on, isn't this enough? And had a right old go at Casca, saying, look, you're a soldier. You'll always be a soldier. You're going to remain that way until the second coming, kind of thing. And Casca sort of went, ugh, and the blood went into his mouth. And that was the point where he was purified and made immortal. He was cursed to immortality. And that's what the Casca series is all about. For all those who don't know, the Casca series is about this Roman soldier who's cursed to immortality and has to live through all the ages, fighting wars and struggling to maintain his sort of anonymity. Because obviously, if you're known to be immortal, people start getting a bit strange around you. And also, there's also the bad guys who are after him.
Yes, and Brotherhood of the Lamb.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So, and you actually expounded on that element with the Brotherhood.
There is a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of what Barry wrote that, because of the short number of books he wrote. I mean, 22 is a lot, but even so, it's still not a lot, really, as far as 2,000 years of history is concerned. He didn't really get the chance to expound on the Brotherhood of the Lamb. I think he wrote a little bit about them in book number 3, which is this one, where Elder Daycourt chopped his hand off. And that's when he was introduced to the Brotherhood, and they had the spear and all that sort of thing. And there was a book number 9, The Sentinel, where he was in Constantinople, where Gregory was the elder, the leader of the Brotherhood. And there's a little bit more about it then. But really, there's not a great deal that he wrote about the Brotherhood. And I thought to myself, well, come on, let's have a little bit more about them, what they're doing, why they're doing it.
Right. Yeah. And you really expounded on that. And it's actually really interesting how you put them into play. So you definitely have built that up quite a bit.
They're always in the background, but I don't always put them in stories. The current one that's coming out in September this year, September 2022, is called The Red Rose, and they don't appear in this one. But the next one, The Hunter, number 58, which is going to come out in April next year, they will appear very heavily. It's set in 2022 during the Russo-Ukrainian War, and it's going to be about Casca going into the area of Chernobyl to infiltrate an old Brotherhood depot, or depot as you like to call it over there.
Yeah.
a facility where they would be developing secret weapons, and obviously Chernobyl came along, curtailed the Brotherhood's activities, but they're all coming back now, and Casca's got to get in there, defeat the lot of them, destroy everything, and get out.
Right.
That's what the story's going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Set amongst the Russian invasion of Ukraine in March of this year. The early part is set amongst in March that year.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's all brewing up here. It's brewing up here. It's going to come out.
Yeah. Well, it looks like I got another cover to do.
No rest for the wicked.
There's no rest for the wicked. So, but on Barry Sadler, he took this legend, he took this myth, he made it into a story. We do know that one of his first books was The Moy, or The Man.
Yes, I've got some of his other books over there signed.
Yeah,
by him.
He wrote, or he did Ballads of the Green Beret. He did
a song.
He did three music albums. He was hoping to really hit it big in the music business, and he did. He left his footprint in the music industry. But
he was number 1 in the States, wasn't he? In 1966, number 1.
Yep, with Ballads of the Green Beret, exactly. And he did 2 other albums after that, and they didn't take off. He also did some bit acting. We know this. And
there was one film he was in, about Mercenary, as I remember. I haven't seen the film, but
I haven't seen it either.
uh,
You know, perhaps one of the listeners out there can chime in, and they probably know a lot more about it. But
yeah,
it wasn't a real success.
no,
And I think he did Death Valley Days. He did some bit roles in there.
didn't get an Oscar anyway.
No, he didn't. He didn't. He didn't get the Oscar. He didn't even get an Emmy. But
No,
he wound up turning his back on both of those professions, and he turned to writing. And it turns into a big success. He wrote The Moy, Nashville with a Bullet, and the big
Morituri.
Yeah, Morituri. Yeah, and then he hits the big time with Casca, the Eternal Mercenary. So he continues writing those series, and he branches off into let's see, Run for the Sun, The Shooter, that series. So it was interesting how diversified he was as a writer. But his main footprint in men's adventure is the Casca, the Eternal Mercenary series.
Yes.
And he was very historically oriented. And that's one thing I have noticed.
Yeah, I mean, that's possibly part of the reason why he joined the military, wasn't it? He had that love of military history.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he liked the discipline of it. He was actually he was in the U.S. Air Force.
Yes, because he joined the Air Force, didn't like it, left, and then joined the Army, didn't he?
Yeah, well, I don't know. He actually liked it, but according to everything I've read from Mark Leibson's book, Ballad of the Green Beret, which came out in 2017, he was in the Air Force, and he was a radar specialist.
Okay.
So, but he wanted more, and the Air Force really couldn't offer him that opportunity. So when he got out, of course, he booted around for a little bit.
Yeah.
And decided to join the Army. So during that time frame, he had actually started working on the song Ballad of the Green Beret. Okay. So what he wound up doing is when he went into the Army, he hadn't quite finished this song.
This is the early 60s, wasn't it?
This is the early 60s. And then he was on patrol, and he stepped into a punji stick trap. His injury became infected. Even though he was a combat, he tried to treat it himself. He was a combat.
It was covered in excrement, wasn't it? That's
exactly.
Put excrement on the punji sticks.
Right, and he tried to treat it himself and continue on with the patrol, but it got to the point where they had to evac him out.
Well, he was the medic, wasn't he? Or he was a medic.
Yeah, he was a combat medic. So while he's recuperating in the hospital, he decides he's going to finish this song. And this is what really kind of exploded him into the forefront,
and made him a byword, a household name amongst all the serving military people.
It did. And that song still resonates with everybody today, especially military veterans and stuff like that. Some guys actually hate it, and then you got some that like it, You
can never please all the people all the time. But Dolly Parton did a cover version of it very recently, I seem to recall.
Who did?
Dolly Parton.
Oh, no way.
I was sent a link on my Facebook page about it just the other day. Dolly Parton doing Ballad of the Green Beret.
Oh, I'm going to have to check that one out.
Check it out. Go on. Dolly Parton.
That's too funny. But
there you go.
And well, he's still even today. He has a powerful presence.
Yes.
That's one thing I will say. With his Casca,
he was a larger than life individual. He was a larger than life individual. I mean, I've spoken to some people who knew him, and he was, a great guy, raconteur, life and soul of the party kind of person. That's the sort of person he was. Very careless with money, but that goes with the territory, doesn't it?
Yeah, he was a little bit careless, but he comes up with this story, the Casca, the Eternal Mercenary. It really sets a major footprint in the men's adventure series.
Yes. It's an inspired story as well.
It is. And the one thing I liked about that series is the historical element. It actually got me into reading more into the history. He might not have been accurate 100% of the time, but as we've discussed,
it's very difficult to be.
Right. As we've discussed before, he was writing what was available research-wise at that time.
It was, yeah.
You know, so, but the more we read on to this, it's just a great series.
Yes, it reads very well. It flows very well. I don't like wordy books that just go into the sort of the far end of everything. It's like, oh, for God's sake, get to the point. And Barry did. You know, he wrote it in a very loose and easy style. Even when he was describing scenery, you know, you sort of got a flavor of what he was writing about. And it never seemed to stop. You know, when you come to a point where you think, oh, I'm bored with this, it never did. It just kept going. And it was very exciting, easy flow, and on a subject that certainly you and I both like. And that's the secret of it. And with Eternal Mercenary, I think it was a great start because he began it in Vietnam in 1970, and he was being brought into a hospital injured. And you can see Barry's experience of being a medic and being in Vietnam, because that part is so authentic. You know, it's just like you can almost taste dust being blown out. Well, you know about dust being blown out. And you know, the hospital itself, the scene and the people moving about, you can actually picture it in your mind when you're reading it.
Right.
It's that authentic. And of course, the fact is,
not to mention the medical terminology.
Indeed, you know, talking about the brain matter, whatever it is he used, the terminology. I'm thinking, goodness, you know, he knows about his medical stuff, and that's why, because he was a medic. And Casca's healing powers came to the attention of a Dr. Julius Goldman, one of the two medics taking care of him in that hospital in Vietnam, and that sort of sets the series going, doesn't it?
It is. Yeah, that was my first book I read in the series. Was The Eternal Mercenary. And I think I was probably like 12, 13 years old at the time. And that was the very first one I read. I was hooked. And of course, it's not exactly, at that time, you know, 12, 13 years old, you're reading men's adventure books like this.
I was reading Sven Hassel at the time, and that doesn't pull any punches either. That's about the German account on the Eastern Front.
Right.
And it was very gritty and meaty, and it was lovely. I loved it. Loved it.
Exactly. And Sven Hassel, he was always popular. And that,
yes,
I can remember being in Germany, and they did Wheels of Terror. Yep. And wasn't that great, but no. But it had potential to be better, I guess you could say.
If they'd thrown money at it, it would have been great. But
right. It was a low cost budget. So
and it looked it.
It did. You know, Sven Hassel. I remember being in Germany. I went to a school that was UK based education.
Yeah.
And I remember some of the kids actually having Sven Hassel books in their that they would carry with them, you know, so it was pretty popular. So I can vouch for that. And back on Barry Sadler, he writes the series, he writes 22 of them. But we're gonna end up talking on the next episode about those first 22 books, your theories on ghostwriting.
Yes.
And we're also going to discuss Barry Sadler's life at the end there and the limbo of the series.
Yeah, the 10-year limbo.
Yeah, the 10-year limbo. So on the next episode, stay tuned. We're going to talk with Tony Roberts again. We'll see you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John.